Welcome back, everybody. Good to have you to another real estate market update for the Greater Milwaukee Area. If you live anywhere here in the Milwaukee area, whether you're currently renting and thinking about buying a home or you already own a home here, if you were looking for some level-headed information about what's going on here in the Milwaukee real estate market, you came to the right place. We have a lot of things to discuss today. There are a lot of changes. I can tell you one thing for sure. The next 12 months in real estate here in Milwaukee will look completely different than the last 12 months. We have a completely new way how agents are going to get paid as a fallout of the NAR settlement. We are having a very different situation with the economy. The Fed is about to change interest rate policy. We have an election coming up, so a lot of things that are impacting the real estate market. And we are seeing over the last couple of months the market really shifting, and that's what I want to talk about today. And by the way, if you're hearing in the evening news that the national real estate market is changing in a certain way, take that with a grain of salt, because we're in a situation where we are seeing wildly different behavior of local markets, East Coast, West Coast, South, Midwest, all over the US. So here we're going to talk specifically of what's happening here locally in Milwaukee and what we can expect for the next few weeks, and maybe get an idea of what's going to happen in the near future. All right, let's get started with the latest numbers straight out of MLS. I have here August 2024. Inventory is up again 34%, third month in a row. 3,675 units were listed for sale. That is fantastic news for buyers because we used to be in the 2,000 to 3,000 unit range. And so when you go from 2,000 to 2,500 to 3,600, that feels like a lot more inventory. But of course, when you look at the historic numbers below from before COVID and all the way back to 2015, you can see it's still relatively tight inventory. So it's always a matter of context, but a lot more inventory than we used to have. And we're happy with that. Sold units just under 2,200, still very, very low. So tight market, low volume, not for a lack of demand, but it's just really driven from a supply and interest rate point of view. Days on market are up again, 7 days on market now. So we are very used to 5 days on market velocity. So things are slowing down noticeably. Again, this is a trend that we have been observing over the last, I would say, 8 to 10 weeks, and it's solidifying more and more. And that's the thing that I pay attention to, because 1 month can always be an outlier. But if you see a trend in real estate shifting for 2 months or 3 months, then you know things are really on the move. And prices are up again, 345,000 compared to last year, August. That's a plus of 6.15%. So what is that telling us? Price appreciation is moderating, so we're still increasing home prices, but not as fast as it used to be. In the long run, if you look at the numbers below, over the last 10 years, real estate prices have basically doubled in Milwaukee. So it will be very interesting what we can expect for next year. And we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But before we get there, what are the current trends that we've seen in the last few weeks here in the market? First of all, since August 17th, the new NAR and MLS commission rules are in effect. So the way how real estate agents are getting paid has changed fundamentally across the country. Of course, that affects us here in Wisconsin as well. We'll talk about this a little bit more. In terms of fewer buyers out there, yeah, we're still seeing that buyer fatigue from the spring market. Spring market has been crazy. A lot of buyers got worn out with that. They're just frustrated and are fatigued. And it's kind of ironic because the market conditions are so much more favorable right now to buyers than they were in spring. Many of them were trying so hard in spring, and they're standing on the sidelines right now. So that is very noticeable to me. Some markets are still very, very hot, especially in the medium and lower price points. Bayview seems to be an absolute exception. Of course, Wauwatosa, West Allis, Whitefish Bay are, some of these markets are still running very, very competitive. But we see it more and more in the higher priced markets that things are really starting to moderate and slowing down a little bit more. And that's not a fluke. We have seen that over the last 8 to 12 weeks. So this is really a trend that's substantiating. And with that, we are seeing fewer offers. So when you look back at the spring market or last year's spring market, we have seen in many cases 8 offers, 10 offers, 12 offers on one property. A lot of people waiving contingencies, no inspection, no appraisal, sometimes no financing. And so it was really tough to compete. We're seeing now fewer offers and we are seeing more contingencies. So we always want, if you really love the house, we always want to get the house under contract, obviously, but it's ideal if we can also get an inspection done. And when you know they already have 10 offers and we can reasonably estimate that 5 of them have waived the inspection contingency, what choices do you have? So it's good to see that things are moderating, they're coming down, they're cooling down. That's a good thing. And now we might be the only offer, or there might be 2 or 3 offers, but it's nothing like it has been in the spring market. A really huge difference. Let's take a closer look what's going on with inventory. We're hitting a 12 months high. That's the blue line here. So a lot more inventory on the market. If you're out there currently, it literally feels like there's 50% more choices, and that is actually factually true. You can see this on the chart here. So the blue line is total inventory. The red line is giving you how much new inventory is listed in any given month. That's a relatively stable line. I'm expecting this for September and maybe into October to hold out somewhere along that range, because my photographer and my stagers are telling me they're all busy, they're all booked out for September and well into October, which means there is a lot more inventory in the pipeline that we're going to see hitting MLS in the next month. So more supply, that's good news for buyers, and it's bringing down the competitiveness. The way we measure that is the sold to list ratio. If you're not familiar with this, most people are not, let me quickly explain. So this is the percentage on how much people end up paying on average over or under list price. In the red zone here, this is basically over list price. So you can see this is coming down nicely, but we are still at 101%. So there's still a lot of deals where people are paying over list price, but the trend is already pointing in a lower direction. And I think we're going to see a continuation of this over the next months, just like we've seen it last year, October, November, and December. If you're thinking, oh, let's wait until December because I can negotiate a great deal, well, the negotiation part is right, but keep in mind that the inventory is usually pretty picked over by that point. So there is only leftover stuff from the summer because a lot of people do not choose to list their property after Thanksgiving. So the choices are not great, but yeah, you can negotiate a lot better. If you are looking for a rental property, investment property, that's a really good time to buy, by the way. All right. Industry practices have changed August 17th. You've seen it in the news early in spring, February and March. It was the big headline, the NAR settlement. So now we are a month into this, and what can I tell you? So in a few words, what has changed is the MLS system is no longer displaying and regulating buyer agent commission. That's how it used to be done. And so that's no longer the case. If I look on MLS, I cannot tell you if the seller is actually offering to pay the buyer's agent's commission. So what is that making necessary? You, as a buyer, you have to sign now a buyer agency agreement that is now required before you actually go out and look at properties. You have to pick an agent and sign a buyer agency agreement with that agent, and that is making buyers a lot more selective. It used to be that a lot of part-time and hobby agents, just slide in because, that your cousin knows somebody and they're doing this part-time and, sure, why not? But, now the stakes are higher because you actually are legally required to sign a contract. So people are getting a lot more careful in their choices and they want to make sure that they're hiring a really good agent. What I can tell you is that after about 4 weeks in this situation, we are not seeing sellers cutting out paying buyer agency commissions. So commissions have always been negotiable. In Wisconsin, we're in the fortunate situation that our process in Wisconsin here has always been a lot more transparent than in other states. So in other states, this has a lot bigger impact here. For us, quite frankly, the changes are not that big. We've always been very transparent. Commission has always been negotiable. Sellers have never been required to pay for the buyer's agent's commission. They have never been required. It was always their choice, but they've always done so because it always has been in their best interest. And what I can tell you now after 4 weeks, from what I can see and what my team has seen and reported back to me, we're doing about 100 transactions every year. is that we're not seeing really a change in that trend. So sellers are still offering the commission. It's just a little bit more cumbersome for us to find out because it's not displayed anymore on the MLS. So it basically becomes part of your offer that you say, here's the price that I'm offering on the house. And by the way, here is the percentage commission that I'm asking you, Mr. Seller, to pay for my buyer's agent. So that is really what it comes down to. But so far, sellers are typically offering it up front. But it's always the choice of the seller, and it always has been. So no change there. So if you're thinking about making a move, we should talk more. You probably have some questions that you want to have answered. I'm very happy to do that. You can just hop on my website, onpointrg.com. The top right, you see a red button, schedule a call. If you click there, what happens, you can choose what you want, maybe a 15-minute phone call with me or a 30-minute Zoom call, and then you can actually see my calendar. You pick a time that works best for you, and then I'll talk to you on the phone or see you on a Zoom call, whatever works best for you. And you can also send me an email. You have my email address here on the screen. With that, let's take a look at what's going on with the economy and what we can expect next. So we're seeing a huge change in direction. We called it in the industry an inflection point. That is when things used to go one way and then all of a sudden they start going in a completely different direction. That is an inflection point. We are currently in one of those inflection points. And on August 22nd, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said the time has come for policy to adjust. We've been waiting for him to say these words for a long time. Why did he do that? First of all, because inflation is really approaching the target rate. The Fed has been trying for a long time to cool down the economy because post-COVID, the economy was running way too hot. That has caused inflation. So they had to cool down the economy, slow things down in order for inflation to cool down. And when you look at the chart here, we've been hovering here around low 3% range for a while. And now in August, 2 days ago, we had the latest reading for the August data. We're now at 2.6%. So that really cements in the case for the Fed to changing the trend. They've already announced it prior, but this is really confirming that we're getting a grip on inflation. The economy is cooling down. And so far, it looks like we're going to have a soft landing. So we're not heading into recessional territory from everything that I'm reading. And the Fed is basically looking at two things. They're looking at inflation because they have to manage inflation, but they're also managing the job market. And unemployment is rising. So you might say, okay, this is a bad thing. Well, from the point of view of the Fed, this is actually good news because unemployment rate has been way too low. The long-standing average has been 5.7%. So we want to be a little bit higher. We were below 4%. Now we are at 4.3. So we're seeing a little bit more unemployment. That means it makes it easier for companies to fill open positions. The job market is also cooling. And that is also helping with inflation. By the way, I'm super proud of Wisconsin. I always want to point that out because people never believe this, but go look it up. Unemployment rate in Wisconsin is always much better than it is overall in the US. We have a very, very well saturated job market at 3.0%. So our Wisconsin economy is still going a lot stronger than the rest of the average of the country. So let's take a look at the federal funds rate. So this is not the mortgage rates. Fed does not set mortgage rates. It's setting the federal funds rate. So this is basically the cost of money for your bank if your bank is borrowing money. And I have a long-term chart here because it shows you a couple of things. First of all, you can see how panicked the Fed was to get inflation under control because they really ran it up here very, very quickly, which caught a lot of banks by surprise, and it was hard on the banking system and also in big steps. So when you look in the past, it's been a lot slower and a lot more gradual. They ran it up really fast and they held it high for a much longer time than we've seen it in the past. And we've been waiting for many months for the Fed to say, okay, it's enough. We're changing our policy. This has finally happened. And so what can we expect here? The next time the Fed is meeting is on September 18th. And almost all economists are expecting that the Fed is going to cut rates. At least once. We're probably seeing between 0.25% and 0.5% of a change. That's not a whole lot, but it's not a one and done. There is going to be probably 6 to 8 rate cuts that we're going to see over the course of the next 12 months. Of course, nobody knows, but that's the general expectation in the market. The federal fund rates has a big effect on the economy because it impacts credit card loans. It impacts car loans, consumer loans in general. So it has a lot of impact on the consumer market, and that is 70% of the US economy. So what they're trying to do here is now they have stepped on the brake, they're easing off the brake, so in order to have that soft landing. So if you have consumer type loans, that is going to be good news. Mortgage rates have already changed a little bit, but before you get there, let me show you something else quickly. I just got back a couple days from Europe, and inflation, you may not know this, inflation has not been a US problem or an American problem. Inflation has been a global problem. The Europeans have suffered from inflation just as much as we did, and they actually suffered more because they peaked here a little over 10%. But also on their end, inflation has come down and it's stabilizing now, so that looks very much like the US chart. But the European Central Bank is already ahead of us, cutting rates, so they equally panicked here, shooting up rates. And then you can see they already have lowered rates twice. So we live in a global world, like it or not. Financial markets are tied together globally. And so the Fed really has not much of a choice here because the Europeans have already lowered rates. Rates in the US are a lot more expensive still. So we're going to see that change here very, very likely in the near future. So September 18th, we should know more. What's going on with mortgage rates? Because that is really what we want to know for the housing market. So you have here an orange mortgage rates since 2018. So we had the period of ultra low rates. Then with inflation, mortgage rates were shooting up. And now the last half year or so, rates have really come down nicely. And we have here the forecast. What can we expect for the next 12 months from Fannie Mae, Mortgage Bankers Association, NAR, and Wells Fargo? They're the most optimistic. I think the consensus here is that we're generally going to see lower rates, but it's not going to be a really sharp drop or massively lower rates. So I would expect rates for next year to be somewhere around 6, maybe a little bit better. Currently, when I look, the best local bank rate that I was able to find is 5.75. That's a local Milwaukee bank, and that is a theoretical rate. So you would have to have absolutely perfect credit, no debt, and putting 20% down. So for a typical practical use case, you're still looking at high 5s or maybe low 6s. On average, but that is still a lot better than where we have been last year in October when we were looking at 7.5%, 8% mortgage rates, in some cases even over 8%. So things are going in the right direction here, but what does that mean for the housing market? Let's take a look at the impact that lower mortgage rates will have. First of all, and a lot of people do not expect this, inventory will go up as we are having lower rates. So this is called the rate lock effect, because a lot of people have refinanced the house down into a 2.75 or 3 mortgage rate. So if they're selling the house, they're basically saying goodbye to their 3% interest rate, and they're buying a new house, maybe even more expensive. And now they have to pay 6 or 7% mortgage rate. So that is their rate lock. They don't want to sell their house. Even they want to because their life has changed or they want to move, but they didn't want to do it because of the high mortgage rates. So as rates are coming down, this gap is getting smaller, and that makes it more and more palatable for sellers to put the house on the market and to actually make a move. They've been waiting for this for a long time, and that's the reason why over the last few months we're seeing more and more listings coming on the market. They've been thinking about this for a long time, but the rates kept them locked into their house. Now, we're also going to see more demand, because we know from a study that was done earlier this year that up to 70% of buyers have given up last year. And they haven't really given up on the idea of owning a home someday. They don't want to rent anymore, but the rates were so high that they just got frustrated. And a lot of them will come back into the market once they realize that mortgage rates are going to be lower. So we have two opposing forces here. One is really driving the market up, and the other one is really bringing the market down. It's supply and demand. And so what does that mean for prices? We don't know, because it really depends which one of the two is going to be stronger and has the bigger impact, because prices are made up by supply and demand. So that brings me to the question, are we in a buyer's market? Are we in a seller's market? And which direction are we going? So if you're not familiar with this metric, this chart is showing you months of inventory. And a lot of people don't have an intuitive understanding from what months of inventory is supposed to mean. Think of it as how much milk you have in the fridge. If you have enough milk to last your family for 1 week, you have 1 week's of inventory in your fridge. If you have enough milk in your fridge for the next 6 weeks and your spouse keeps bringing more milk from the grocery store, then you know you have an oversupply. You already have too much milk. You have already 6 weeks worth of inventory. And with the real estate market, it's the same. So we generally consider a balanced market around 5 or 6 months worth of inventory. So we have been in a buyer's market famously back here in 2008, 2010. Buyers were calling the shots. They were negotiating huge discounts because there was just an oversupply of inventory. Of course, over the last few years and with COVID, we have been here very much in a seller's market. We did not have enough inventory. On a national basis, and this is US data, we are moving in the right direction. So if you're seeing this in the evening news, just know that is this chart, and it's for on a national level. So we're heading more and more into a balanced market. Now, real estate markets behave very differently. Real estate is always local, and that's why it's so important that I want to give you the Milwaukee data here. So the green line here is the Milwaukee metro area. And you can make the case that we're also kind of turning a corner here a little bit, but we're still in a very different situation than the national market is. So when you watch this on the evening news, take it with a grain of salt and know that Milwaukee is a different market. Let's take a look how the national markets are behaving. So here I have the top 10 buyer markets where prices are going down. When you look through the list here, you will notice that 5 of them are actually in Florida. So they have too much supply, not enough demand. With the high interest rates that we've seen over the last months, prices are down. So they are in a buyer's market. And when we look here at the top 10 sellers market, we have here New York, then a lot of California markets, or West Coast markets, I should say, San Jose, San Francisco, Seattle, also Washington, D.C. Chicago is also in the top 10. And in number 16, we have Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So these are the markets where prices are going up. So there is no national U.S. real estate market. You really have to look locally in metro areas. Some markets go this way, some markets are going the other way. So what can we expect for the Milwaukee markets for the next few weeks in the near future? Rates will continue to go down. As you have seen, the Fed hasn't even reduced the federal funding rates yet, and we already have seen mortgage rates coming down because the mortgage rates are really shaped in the financial markets, in the bond markets, and they've already anticipated a lot of the changes that we're seeing. So the Fed is a little bit lagging, they're a little bit late. That's the reason why we also think that rates are not going to drop a whole lot more, because a lot of the rate dropping potential is already priced in, if that makes sense. So 6%, maybe a little bit lower. More inventory in the next 4 weeks for the reason that I have elaborated. And so the next 60 days are probably the best buying window that you're going to see in the last 12 months, maybe also in the next 12 months, because spring market is going to be crazy again. And one of the reasons is that the Fed rate is likely to bring more attention. So once the Federal Reserve announces that's going to be in the evening news again, rates are being cut, a lot of the buyers that have left the market said, okay, rates are just too high. When they hear the Fed is cutting rates, they will check mortgage rates again, and a lot of those people will come back into the market. You know, what will everybody else be doing when rates are going down? That's really the question that you have to ask yourself. The election cycle will slow down the market. I reported on that a couple months ago in great detail with the history of what past elections have done. So really, elections don't have a big impact on pricing whatsoever. That's just supply and demand. But what it does do, it slows down the market in general, because buyers and sellers don't like uncertainty, so some of them want to wait until after the election so they see which way it goes before they're making their move. So that was temporarily slowing down the market a bit, but historically it never had a big impact on actual prices. If you're thinking about selling, now is a really good time. So you still have September and October to get your house on the market and get top dollar for it. Or you can wait until spring. If you choose to wait until spring, then you already want to start preparing If you want to have a conversation with me, if you want to know how much your house is worth, I'm happy to come out and tell you that. We would also already take exterior pictures, because if you put your house on the market in early spring and everything is brown outside, you really stand out if we already have some nice summer pictures with green grass and green trees on file. So it's never too early to prepare for that. And also I can help you with making a list of what you should and shouldn't be doing to get your house ready to sell, to really optimize the net bottom line, your return on investment. There's a few things that sometimes should be done. Most of the time I actually have to talk people out of taking on big projects that really don't deliver a good return on investment. So you end up doing a lot of work and then not getting your money back out of it. Let me take a look at it and tell you which things are worth doing it and which things to stay away from. If you want to, you can send me an email, m.auerbach@kw.com, or go on my website, onpointrg.com, and you have access to my calendar and can book an appointment. Looking forward to hearing from you. That's all I had for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next month.